Now, a top story on BBC Sussex this morning at 8 minutes past 8 o'clock. The government comes under pressure to screen all blood for variant CJD. The Brighton Kemptown MP, Simon Kirby, is meeting the members of several families who've lost loved ones to the brain disease today, including Peter Buckland, whose only son died after a blood transfusion which was contaminated by vCJD.
We watched this devastating disease. Basically, once this prion protein, this misfolded protein, gets above the blood-brain barrier, it misfolds all the prion protein up there, and they become misfolded and rogue. And basically, it's like dementia, severe dementia, Alzheimer's. And to see your son die within 5 minutes, within 5 months of coming home, being able to walk and talk, and then end up a zombie, it's not good.
Well, several families were upset when their petition for screening to Downing Street last year seemed to be ignored. And let's talk to the lady behind that petition, Christine Lord, who joins us on the line now. Good morning.
Hello there, Neil.
Tell me about your petition, then.
Yeah, well, my petition was to David Cameron on the International CJD Day. Now, I'd like to sort of emphasise to some of your listeners that vCJD is the human form of, I hate that word, but mad cow's disease. It was to do with BSE material that was in the food and medicine chain. So on the 12th of November last year, myself, Pete Buckland, and many families that have been affected by this terrible disease, because I must emphasise that hundreds of people have died and thousands of people are living victims where they're actually at risk of developing the disease because they've had contaminated blood.
But we don't know exactly how many, and they don't know. Therein lies the rub.
Well, they don't know. I mean, experts predict that 1 in 4,000 of us are probably silently carrying the disease, and our concern about actually having all donated blood screened for variant CJD is that the Department of Health are now fully aware of asymptomatic donors. These means that are people like you and I that may never develop variant CJD, but we carry the disease and have the ability to pass it on.
So how did you get on with the petition then?
Well, the petition we handed in, and there was also 6 families that wrote personal letters to David Cameron explaining that we can prevent future and further deaths if we screen our blood, and we have had no reply from David Cameron personally. We've had no reply from Downing Street. Now,
so nothing at all. So the petition goes into Downing Street, and you don't hear a dicky bird.
No, not even. And many of the families wrote personal letters to David Cameron, who has also lost a child, as heartbroken families, saying, "Look, we've lost a child. Please, can you do something? Please, can you actually, initiate blood screening for variant CJD?" There is the technology there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Christine, let's just go back to this petition, because I know the BBC, we have been speaking to Number 10 Downing Street to talk about the issue of the petition, really, and why it didn't get a response. Apparently, they say there are loads of petitions get handed into Number 10, and it's impossible for the Prime Minister to respond to each one individually. However, they did promise that he would write to the organiser of the petition, which I understand is you.
Yeah, and 85 days later I've received nothing. And it's all very well saying that they received loads of petitions, but currently there is a lady dying of variant CJD in the south that received a blood transfusion at a local hospital, and the family have been informed that her donor is a carrier and is well. So the Department of Health are fully aware of these blood donors that are giving blood, that are remaining healthy, but are implicated in people dying of variant CJD.
But they just don't know who they are, do they? And that's the problem.
They do.
Well,
they can trace them.
How could they trace them?
Well, they can trace them now. I have been told by Professor Collins, who is world expert in prion disease, that now when somebody donates blood, they can trace somebody back almost to the day that they've given the blood to that person.
All right, okay. Simon Kirby's listening to that. You're going to be talking to him in person, face to face later on. The Brighton Kemptown MP. Thanks for joining us, Simon. So,
good morning.
Number of issues to take up. Do you think the government should be responding more warmly to people who send in petitions? First of all.
Well, can I firstly say how very sad it is that 170 people have died from this terrible thing. The government are very much aware of the issue, and I spoke only yesterday to the Health Minister, Anne Milton, about this issue. I've actually raised questions in Parliament 5 or 6 times in December over this, and it's absolutely something that the government understands and knows that significant progress needs to be made.
But you're not an apologist for Number 10 Downing Street, but you must be a little bit dismayed that it doesn't, many days on from this petition, they've actually heard nothing from Number 10 at all. That's disappointing, isn't it?
I think the important thing is that the ministers dealing with it, the health ministers, the Secretary of State for Health, are aware of the importance of early diagnosis, aware
doesn't actually answer my question about the petition, though, does it?
Well, there are a lot of petitions, and if Number 10 and David Cameron, who I know is very interested in all matters concerning health, if he said he will reply, then he will, and I'm sure the government will do all they can to help.
Right. Okay. On the subject of screening, I mean, this does come interestingly just as at the same time with this new test which has been developed to offer earlier diagnosis. Will the government be putting more money, do you think, into screening and making blood products more safe?
I certainly hope so. I mean, it's about early diagnosis. It's about a move towards screening donor blood. There are a number of technologies for a variety of screening methods. In this case, it's prion filtering, but pathogen reduction technology is also applicable. But at the end of the day, what we need for CJD is a cure. And I understand from the same report that though there is currently no cure, that John Collins is moving towards one, and that's very exciting.
Okay, Simon Kirby, thanks very much indeed. Christine Lord as well, and we'll be hearing more on this story after 8:30 when we're going to be speaking to a haemophiliac who obviously with the number of blood transfusions they get, they are very susceptible to problems with the blood they receive. Our top story this morning. People in Sussex are among those urging the government to screen all blood for variant CJD, the brain disease, otherwise known as the human form of mad cow disease. Now, the Brighton Kemp Town MP, Simon Kirby, is meeting members of several families who've lost loved ones to the condition. We spoke to him earlier on. Among those meeting him is Pete Buckland, whose only son, Mark, died after a blood transfusion containing vCJD some 5 years ago. He says contaminated blood needs filtering.
The government are very hesitant at putting it into place. At the moment, we have no prion filtration, and the silent incubation, that is people who have doned blood and received blood, indeed, throughout the UK, the prerequisite is that they should have some sort of filtration in place.
We're going to speak to another chap now who knows all about taking contaminated blood. This is Mark Ward, who's previously received transfusions contaminated with HIV, hepatitis B and C, and has now been told that one of his donors had vCJD. He's a member of a group called taintedblood.info, a campaign for better screening. Hello, Mark. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning.
Hi. Goodness gracious. Does that mean you have HIV? You may have vCJD sort of in your body?
Yes, I was one of the unfortunate boys who was injected with the treatment that I have to take for my haemophilia, which is a blood product. But because of the haemophilia, we also have blood transfusions in cases of surgery, or if, say, like suffering from really bad nosebleeds, which I did as a boy, they would need to treat us to stop the bleeding and then top up with your blood. So
you have a nosebleed, but it just won't clot. That's the thing, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what haemophiliacs are born with. Yes, we don't stop bleeding, and as a result of that, hepatitis C, along with all the hepatitis viruses, it's not just hepatitis C. As you mentioned, it's B, it's E, it's G, and also this included HIV. And a whole host, I mean, we're talking anything that was in the population was infused into haemophiliacs. And, of course, vCJD is one of them.
Do you consider yourself lucky to be alive? Because, I mean, the blood actually saved you, but it also might, and I hate to say it, but it might end up killing you, the blood you took on.
That's actually a bit of a double-edged sword there, really, Neil, because you see, the difference between somebody who, if, say, for instance, a person has a car crash and they're rushed into hospital and they're operated on, they need pints of blood to save their lives. That is critical, and they need that blood. But with the haemophilia community, many operations, especially in the beginning, the early 80s, haemophiliacs were taken into hospital under full operation procedures to have 4 teeth out or to have tonsils removed. They're not life-saving operations. So with regards to a haemophiliac, especially mild haemophiliacs, there were and there are alternative treatments, and taking a tooth out isn't life-saving.
No, sure, I understand that. And Mark, what about screening of blood and safer blood? Presumably you'd be backing that sort of campaign for the government to put a bit more money into screening blood that is used by everybody.
Well, yes, this is something we've actually been calling for many years. I've been listening to the programme this morning, and Simon Kirby has actually been very supportive so far with the Contaminated Blood campaign. I do find it really sad that this cruel government looked recently and held a review into contaminated blood, but they only chose to look into one tiny part of it, which was hepatitis C. And I say the word cruel because the most cruelest thing they did was to put a corn plaster on a gaping wound, and they've chosen to ignore all of the other aspects of this dreadful scandal that started off many years ago.
Mark, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. It's